Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Elena Sierra. I am the Director of Networks for the Food Processing Suppliers Association, commonly called FPSA. I want to thank you all for joining us for the 2021 Food Safety Showcases. It's brought to you by our Food Safety Network. And just to let you all know, this is going to be going on through October 29th. These sessions are online. There's 30 minutes of content length, and we hope you join us for other future sessions. Here today to present on data is Lucas.
Hey, Lena, thank you for the quick introduction. Hi, everyone. It's great to be here and have the chance of giving you this brief informational presentation on what we learned throughout our company lifecycle here in Otrafy and share some of the insights that we've gained. This is going to be really interesting. This is going to be our data. Why does it matter, and how to organize your house in the 21st century presentation. My name is Lucas. I am the co-founder of Otrafy, and I come from a food and beverage background. So before actually founding Otrafy, I used to run a food and beverage company that was doing a lot of import, export, and food distribution between Canada, US, and China. And it's actually through that experience that I learned about a lot of the issues and challenges that were being faced by the food industry, and decided to create Otrafy as a tool that would basically bring technology to that space that really does need it a lot. And at Otrafy, what we have today is a quality management system that really optimizes business processes and applies artificial intelligence and other technologies into making business processes better and people more efficient. And our vision is to become the data infrastructure that enables the transitioning of goods in the food supply chain in the future. And that's really where we want to get at in the next few years. So some of the key takeaways of today that you should expect is benchmarking our food safety practices. So basically understanding how does your company compare to other companies that are out there, and what do we see in the market when we go and have conversations on a day-to-day basis with all size companies, from really big Fortune 100 to medium-sized to really small mom and pop shops. So all size companies and all sorts of food company sizes that we've seen. The next takeaway is understanding the use of artificial intelligence into identifying food safety risks. So that's a big part of what we do, and a big part of where we are going with our technology. So really hoping that you can learn a little bit on that today. Finally, understanding why implementing automation is really important, and the impact of food safety automation in your team, which is probably a little bit different than what you think from watching movies about AI and looking at Terminator and those kinds of things. So all of this is really relevant because really, guys, when we think about food, we think about all of the great stuff, like the color, the smell, and the taste. But did anyone here think about paper? Well, most people don't, except for me and my team, where we constantly think about the 200 billion pages of documents that exist and maintain the food supply chain today. Take this box of Cheerios, for example. To bring this box to market, General Mills is required by law to document all of its regulation, as well as collect all of its hard safe certifications and gluten-free certifications. That requirement applies to each and every one of its 20 ingredients that make up the composition of this Cheerio box. So for each and every single one of those ingredients, those documents needed to be collected, maintained, filed and organized, reviewed, and then renewed, and sometimes even shared. So let's make some quick calculations here. We have 20 ingredients, 3 claims, over 20,000 pages of documents have to be maintained, collected, organized, and shared and reviewed for this one box of Cheerios to be out there in the market. And that was just one product. Data behind food and beverage is no longer a nice to have, but a must. If companies want to stay competitive on the 21st century, they need to efficiently gather, organize, and adapt, and work with everything that is out there when it comes to technology to stay competitive and differentiate themselves. Data is really important. Now let's take some of the things that we've learned through research and really through a lot of conversations we have on this day-to-day basis. So some of the things we learned is that about only 5% of the companies that we talk to are really using the automation and quality metrics to bring down the cost of quality. And in average, what that means is 50% more efficient when it comes to cost on the comparison from those top 5 to the bottom 95% companies in average. Cost of quality can be broken down in many different topics. To bring some of them up here, you have non-conformances, you have quality variations, you have supplier complaints, process maintenance. Worst cases can even involve product recalls. So how do companies usually address those problems and address the cost of quality? There's usually 3 main ways that they can do it. So the first one is through technology. So that's where they bring new technology so that they can do more things and achieve more things with their team. The second one is through processes. So they can reinvent their processes, they can invest in consultants, they can do those kinds of things. And then the third one is through people. They can just throw more wood in the fire and make sure that it keeps burning. So, those are usually the 3 ways that companies will invest in addressing the cost of quality. There is no wrong or right. It really depends on the problem that the company is trying to solve. But where we stay at as Otrafy is in between the technology and processes. So we usually will come into this to these teams and we will enable them with technology and improve their processes so they can do more with the team that they already have. So now I actually have a question, and this is a question that I thought would be interesting to ask here today. So in average, when we go to a company and we ask them like, hey, what's your compliance rate outside of an auditing season? What do you guys think is the average compliance rate that we find on the market outside of auditing season? So compliance rate meaning the amount of the documentation that I need from my suppliers that I have that are up to date before or outside of an auditing season. And you should be receiving the pool right now. And let's just wait a few seconds so the answers can start coming in. Awesome. So I'm going to go ahead and close the pool. If you haven't voted, I'll give it another second. And done. Cool. So I just received some of the answers here. People are saying between 10 to 30%. And then the second place was between 31 to 50% of companies have of compliance rate outside of auditing season. Well, you guys were actually pretty close to the accurate point. It is somewhere between 30 to 50% that we found, or actually you were accurate, that we find the compliance rate to be at outside of auditing season, which is really scary, right? Because when you imagine that procurement is still putting POs through from the suppliers, although they might not be compliant anymore, although they may no longer be organic, and you're still claiming on your label that you're organic. They might be using allergens, but you haven't updated that document, so you don't know if anything has changed. So it's actually pretty scary to not have that compliance documentation up to date because it can cause a lot of issues. But you might be asking, why is it so hard to become compliant? And the answer to that is because actually the system was designed on a period where Excel and email were king. So it was a different time where you didn't have as much technology, and basically the processes were very different, and the technology available was very different than what we have today. So what you're looking at right now is actually what we call process mapping. So every time that we're doing new client discovery, or even sometimes even talking to prospects, we like to draw out their processes, right? And then break them down into people, systems, and processes. So basically understand from beginning to end, how do you onboard new suppliers? How do you maintain those suppliers' documentation? And this is an average sample of what we usually find. So this is like the most average you will find out there for the industry. So it usually starts like this. Sales or R&D want to onboard a supplier. So for that, they're going to start the onboarding process. At some point, they will realize that they need to collect quality documentation. So they will send them an email requesting quality documentation. When they send that email, they will CC quality so that quality can start reviewing the documents. Now, supplier is going to respond to sales or R&D, but sometimes they don't even CC R&D, they don't even CC QA. So they just click reply and not reply to all. So then R&D or procurement have to then forward it to QA. And then QA is going to do the initial analysis. But basically, as you see, this initial process starts and stays within R&D and procurement. So finally, when the documents are initially collected, that's when the food safety quality team will come in and will start really the hard work of actually analyzing the documents. Analyzing the documents here, most of the cases, these people are so busy that it doesn't mean going in depth about each of those documents. It really just means seeing if everything is there, analyzing expiring dates, taking those expiring dates out, and then copying and pasting them into an Excel document, and then organizing them into file share. So that's usually the steps that goes there. After that, we go to the final steps, which is approval or decline of that or decline of that supplier, and that step is usually led by QA, R&D, and procurement. We usually see a very strong lack of communication at this stage with suppliers. So usually the suppliers are not let know that they have been approved, because QA usually doesn't do that, and then procurement or R&D just sends them the PO, but there's no formal communication. Also, in this stage here, when there are problems or need for further information, QA is really just an analyst here. R&D and procurement are still hosting and kind of organizing the relationship. So you pretty much have a man in the middle within food and beverage companies that stays in the middle between the supplier and the analyzer, and then basically just collects that information. So, that's pretty much how it is today. So basically about 90% of the revision work happens here in the middle, and then communication management stays in each of the edges. What's the problem with that? The problem is that the guys here collecting adding new suppliers, they don't see the amount of work that gets done here. And the guys here have a really hard time connecting with the suppliers directly. And then the guys here never know when things are expired, because this is only covering onboarding of new suppliers. So then what about when they expire, right? Can I still buy from them? There's really no good visibility or no accounted way for longer term kind of relationships. Everything is thought about short term when it comes to this kind of documentation revision. And that ends up creating a really messy environment. So what is the benefit of technology? Well, when we come in to speak with one of these companies, here's what we propose them. So whatever they had before, we cut out most of their processes and we say, this is what it's going to look like with Otrafy. And we basically become the automation capability that automatically connects them to their suppliers, and then automatically does all of the, hey, there is something that is expiring, and automatically renews those expiring. And then automatically, so for example, today procurement needs to know which questions to ask a supplier when onboarding, right? Because they're running that first step of the process where they CC QA. But with Otrafy, QA is going to design which documents are required depending on the supplier, on the product category. So then procurement is just going to go in, select the product category, and all the forms are going to automatically be selected for procurement, even though procurement doesn't have the knowledge of what's required for that supplier specifically. So the process becomes a lot more efficient, and we usually see a very strong efficiency gain with above 40% automation and really a lot of efficiency gain overall as well, with suppliers responding faster, responding more accurately, and all of that. So here's another interesting piece of information that I thought I would share today. Quality assurance managers spend a lot of their time on documentation management. And this is only at the 50% here, because usually the quality assurance manager is going to run the initial risk analysis and the initial onboarding, but the renewal goes to the quality assurance technicians. So that means that this usually doesn't account for renewals, but even though it doesn't account for renewals, it's already taking 50% of time of quality assurance managers. And the really key point here is that 50% of the time of the quality assurance managers, and this is again in average, we ask the teams what they spend their time on, and we kind of rank that. And what you're looking at is an average that we usually find of how does quality assurance managers spend their time. This 50% that you're looking at here is actually not reviewing or not reading documents necessarily. It's all about Excel management, email management. Hey, did I already send that one reminder? Oh, I don't know. Let me check my email. And then I have 100 emails on my inbox. So then I got to figure out if I already did. And it's a lot of back and forth and drafting emails and remembering to remind people and all of that. So it's a very, very manual process. And this food scientists that have very high up kind of educations, their educations are being used 50% of their time on those Excel managements and email management. So that's really what we see out there. So messy environment. So what's the benefit of technology, right? So there's a few things. So we'll start with the business processes, and this is really the ABC, right? So here, and I'm from Brazil, we call this the rice and beans, right? The basic plate, table stakes. So here, what you're doing is, we're improving business processes. So what we're doing is we have forms that would have contact information, we have forms that would have producing location, clean label search, third-party audit reports, all of those. So there's an aspect of those 50% of their time that goes into collecting, renewing, kind of categorizing and doing all of that. So the business processes with a tool like Otrafy get fully automated. And then that's when the cool piece starts. That's what gets me the most excited. Then we start applying technology to it. And what we do is we start using OCR to extract data and AI to read, analyze, and tag data. So basically here, we can look at, for example, a clean label cert like an organic certification, and we can extract the expiration date so that we can validate if that certificate is still valid or not. And then we can automatically renew it. And then we can also take the NOP ID, for example, and compare to the USDA database. So we can add a lot of automation here. With non-conformances, for example, we can basically just take out the third-party audit reports and extract the non-conformances and then give you a breakdown of the non-conformances of the product or the facility which you're analyzing. So basically, what we're doing here is not eliminating that human reviewer, but rather empowering that human reviewer, empowering them not to spend time on bureaucratic Excels and bureaucratic file shares, empowering them to have really good technology to filter and give them the information they need to make the analysis and the decision and take the decisions that they need. So they can check if the information that they're looking at is matching with their expectation. They can check if the risk evaluation based on the third-party audit digest makes sense. They can check the AI and make the analysis of the supplier based on that AI result. So this is really where AI is coming in. It's about empowering that human reviewer. And what I've been telling you on this previous slide was the one-to-one. So you're looking at one document and then Otrafy is extracting that one document, and that's great. But the thing that gets me really excited is the ManytoOne documents. So think about this. If today you were to ask your quality assurance department, hey, can you do a breakdown of risk and tell me which ones are the riskiest suppliers that I have today on my operations? If your operation is anything that is in a significant size, that's going to be a really hard task. That is going to require a lot of contractors, a lot of overtime, and a lot of time just to figure that out. Because you're going to have to rank it, and when you finish ranking it, it's no longer going to be up to date. So you need technology to be able to do that automatically for you. So one of the things that we are developing here, for example, is a third-party analysis or third-party report risk analysis, which basically take out that information on the one-to-one analysis and then gives you a breakdown of like, hey, these are your 100 suppliers. And this is how we categorize them based on the average risk that we found when analyzing each of them. And risk is going to be considered based on all of the metrics that are out there on the third-party report. So, who was the auditor? What is the country of origin? How many non-conformances were found? And many other kind of areas that we're looking at to come up with this correction index metric. So finally, I thought I would give you a quick example of how does the automation look like in practice. And this is something we have today in Otrafy. So basically, People will push their kosher certificates into Otrafy. The suppliers are going to push them to Otrafy for the buyers to review. And then the buyers are going to go and start the revision process. There's going to be an extract data and an analyze result button. So if you click on the analyze result button, our AI is going to pull the document up to front of you. It's going to analyze that document, and then it's going to give you a breakdown of all the inconformances that we found, the things that are wrong in that document, the non-conformances. So for example, where you see the little yellow icon, that is basically a variation. So we can automatically flag, is this expiration date still valid? You have asked this document for a supplier. Is the supplier named on the kosher certificate the same one that you are asking this for? You have asked for these 5 products. Did we find all of these products on this kosher certificate, or are we missing any of those products? And then you will see the warning signs as we find non-conformances with what you're expecting. So that revision process is still required. So you still need to go here and kind of validate and look at things. But everything is so much easier and made available to you very quickly and instantaneously. So basically what we're proposing here is the empowering of the staff to become more efficient. Imagine that to read a third-party analysis, you need a senior quality assurance professional that has been doing that for many years because they understand where to find what information on the document. Well, basically what we're doing is we're empowering the junior quality assurance professional to do the same kind of task because we give them that information broken down with certain warnings and, hey, this is where you should look at, right? And I mean, a good question you should be asking is like, hey, so, why don't you just get more people? Why do you really need that tech? And the reason why is because 200 billion pages of documents, as I was mentioning in the beginning of this presentation, are sustaining the food supply chain today. And this number is expected to triple in the next 5 years. So the logic here is you still need people, and you're always going to need people, but you also need to have the right tools so they don't just do manual work and they don't just spend their time on Excels and emails, but they can spend their time on things that matter and guaranteeing that your risks are being addressed and that you understand your risks and you can manage them and you have visibility into those risks. So if something goes wrong, you can really fast address them, and then you can also keep compliance up to date without much pain. So data organization is a must, and automation of risk identification really happens with an interaction between human and people. And just throwing people or just throwing technology without proper training doesn't solve the problem. And that's what we usually see on a day-to-day. And when we go to talk to our clients or our prospects, we come in with a partnership model, really trying to help them redesign their processes, train their people, and make sure that things are up to date so that we can implement Otrafy and see a really good result with having all that automation implemented into their day-to-day. Now, finally, food making is changing and it's evolving and it's no longer the same, and we cannot accept it to be the same. So we, as people that work in the food and beverage industry, cannot just be happy with what we have currently. We need to adapt. We need to evolve. Everywhere things are changing from farm to table, from farmers where data is being gathered a lot more efficient, from the tractors, from drones, from all sources of different data sources that you can see on little maps, and then you have automatic irrigation going to danger zones and all these really cool things happening here. To the factory where you have all these automation pieces like Otrafy, like machines that you have digital clones of those machines, and when something is broken and the support is already there. So it's all this kind of innovations happening there as well. To trucking, where you have AI applied to logistics and you have self-driving vehicles and optimization of routes and all these new uses of technology, really making this experience of logistics a lot better. To the retailers, where basically you have social media becoming a lot more important, and you have social buying becoming a lot more important. So people understanding what they're buying and really demanding clean, transparent labels and really demanding to understand the information behind that product. Finally, to the customer table, where they can basically just share any information that they see, anything that is out of conformances and out of what they expected on social media, and really affect badly the brand of a company very quickly. So farm to table food making is changing. The way that we see food is changing, and we gotta adapt. And as food processors, we need to come up to the 21st century, have our data available so that any kind of variation we can correct proactively instead of just waiting for things to hit, for things to hit up the ceiling, and then we gotta kind of retract our footsteps and figure out where things went wrong in a process that is really painful, really expensive, and it takes loads of time. So that was the presentation for today. Now I'm happy to take some questions. And if we have some time, I'll do a little demo as well.
Great. All right, thank you, everybody. If you have questions for Lucas, I want to see a demo, I know that. Please submit them into the chat or questions box. It should be on the bottom right-hand side of your screen. One question that did come in, Lucas, was what would you recommend if there was something that companies could do today to get ready for the future of data? What would it be?
Yeah, so I can tell specifically about food and beverage. It depends on where the company is. What's the segmentation of that company, but specifically in food and beverage, I think there is a lot of really cool things happening, and really cool technologies that are coming and changing the market and kind of revolutionizing the way that we do things. And the best way to figure out what's out there is usually by looking at startups, but looking at good startups. So something you can do, for example, with the startup environment at the F&B space, you have the Techstars Farm to Fork program, right? They're a really competitive program. About 2,000 companies apply to them on a yearly basis, all of them coming from an F&B background, and only 10 of them get selected to participate on that program that happens once a year. So that's an awesome space for you to look at the pitches that are coming out of that program and really seeing what's out there, what's upcoming in technology when it comes to food and beverage innovation. So really looking at those, like, hey, what's like really edge, and then you can also look at more kind of stabilized companies like SAP or Oracle to see what's already standardized across the industry. Because usually the thing about these big providers is like you're going to get something that is going to take 3 years to be implemented, and when it's implemented, technology moves so fast that it's no longer relevant. So if you really want to innovate and understand what's out there, you need to have somewhere of a mix between those those existing providers that very standardized and that kind of very well known, but also taking some risks with some startups and some tech that can really help. And there's all sorts of ways you can work with startups and take very calculated risks on that as well that pay off. And I've seen them paying off really really well.
Great. No, that's great advice. And what was the name of the group that funded your company as a startup?
Yeah, so I mean, there's a few different angel groups and a few different, these programs that fund startups. We actually went through this Techstars Farm to Fork that I was just mentioning. So it's called Techstars Farm to Fork program, and it's really good top level kind of F&B tech coming out of that program.
Great. So another question that came in was, how does it look like to get started with like a startup company like yourself? What does getting started look like?
Yeah, it depends on the stage. So I'll tell you how it looks like to work with us, for example, right? So working with us, basically, when we're doing the onboarding, it's pretty standard, although we take a lot of care of our clients, and we want to make sure that things go well, because our clients also become our kind of like, the showroom for us in the future. But for us, it's really standard. What we do is, and I would just, since I have my screen here, I can show that. So what we do is we send them this, this standard Excel document, which has the layers that we follow in Otrafy. And we ask them like, hey, we know you have a bunch of, share folders or share files. Can you please tell us what is the companies that you're buying from, what their facilities are, the products that you're buying from them? And then we ask them to fill this out for us. And we fill this out with them. Sometimes if they have more time, we ask them to fill it out because it's more accurate. If they don't, we fill it out for them. And then basically we do the data import. It's very simple. It takes like, it's pretty quick to be done. And we do the data import and we create for them a profile on Otrafy. This is what the platform looks like. So, they would come in here and their data would be fully already in the platform, and then they can just start using it. The reminders on the renewals would be automatically sent out for them if we fill out the data import document. And basically everything would be automatically taken care of.
One thing that I found interesting, we were just talking before the session began, a startup like yours is willing to do the data migration for the company as part of your fee, not just
Oh
charge
yeah.
extra.
Yeah, so really like, and that's what I was mentioning, like for us, our clients become our showroom. We want to give them a great experience and we want to be different than what's out there. So yeah, we don't charge for data migration. We take care of this process. We do the setting up of Otrafy. What we want to see when we're talking to new clients is usage. We want to see them using it, loving it, and then giving us, kind of a really good background so that we can go and kind of show the industry like, hey, look, these are some of the great results. And we've pushed that kind of model with many companies till today, and we've seen a lot of success, and we're very proud of it. We don't think that these services are something that we want to charge for. I mean, some companies that have really complex needs, then maybe they want to have some, maybe there's some need for external help. But when it's like, some standard procedures, we just take care of this and live by ourselves and happy to put that on the model. Another really cool thing that we do actually is a lot of times, one of the questions I hear all the time from prospects when we're talking to them, they say like, hey, so are my suppliers going to accept this? Are they going to really sign up to your platform and use your platform instead of answering to me via email? And what we tell them is like, yes, we know that's going to be the case, but if you're doubtful, we can give you a free implementation pilot. It's about 2 months timeline where they can basically just use Otrafy and they can see that their suppliers are using it, accepting it. They can see the acceptance rate. We keep track of all the metrics like first pass correct. So out of 100 requests you sent, how many came back right the first time? We keep track of all of the like supplier efficiency metrics, the risk analysis, and all of those things. And then by the end of the 2 months, if we achieve some KPIs, then we basically just convert into a yearly SaaS agreement. But they have that 2 months period where they can really test the tool, see the benefits for themselves, and clarify a lot of their own questions. And this is again very unique because we're a startup and it's unique about the way we do things. I don't know how long that's going to go for. Honestly, our pipelines, as they get really full, we can only sustain this for a certain amount of time. We do want to sustain that for at least another year, but we'll see how things are going to go.
That's great to know. And again, a benefit of a startup that you guys give that kind of initial trial period and folks can see it in live action. I want to go back to a point you made during your presentation about automation empowering the worker, not necessarily eliminating the worker, which I think is counterintuitive when you say the word automation to business MBA folks. From your experience, as automation has come to the forefront of the technologies that we're using in food processing, have you seen a real decrease in the number of workers needed to complete a task, or are we empowering workers to do more?
No, I see more efficiency. So I see, it's really expensive to hire people, and it's really hard to find good people. So usually the companies they don't want to let go of their good employees, right? It's like honestly most of the time, actually every single time that I talk to companies about this, they value their employees a lot. So they don't want to just get rid of them. It's about how can you help them do more. So as I was mentioning, right, today you have this experienced food scientists and they're spending their entire day on Excel management, typing in expiration dates, and then typing in comments about an email that I sent, and then putting an Outlook reminder so that I remember to send another email in 2 days, and doing this hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times. So it's about not letting them do that anymore and letting them do the thinking work. So it's really about like technology empowering to do better their jobs and not eliminating their jobs. It's very different. So that's kind of the thing, right? And then about if you have a team of 5, for example, you don't need to grow that to 10 in the next year because there's more regulatory demand, right? So you basically can continue with the kind of workforce you have, with the training that you have, and then you can maintain employee turnover as well, as you kind of addressing those things with technology. So you can't change employee turnover, but you kind of like you have the right systems in places that when this happens, you're not in a bad spot.
Yeah, and I was going to say it's a good point about regulatory demands are only increasing. Transparency demands from the customers are only increasing, and understanding, supply chain needs, those demands are only increasing. And really, automation is just a solution; it's the future. And it's best to get started at some point. And it's sort of like pulling a Band-Aid, and when are you going to do it? You got to do it someday.
Yeah, and think about it, right? If you have increasing regulations and more documents that you need to control, you can throw more people in the problem, but are you going to do that every single year? And then, like, are you going to create new processes so that you can kind of, maintain, like, make sure that those staffs are being well allocated? Are you going to hire new managers for that as well? How are you going to really grow? Are you going to grow sustainably? Even if you need to grow your team, are you going to grow it sustainably, or are you just going to grow it because you're growing it and you're never going to change your processes? Really, like what I see, the flow chart that I shared, that flow chart, it's crazy because that's designed on a period where companies are first starting and they have no money and no access to technology. So then they're just thinking like, oh yeah, I can send an email here and my buddy is going to be CC'd who is going to be kind of analyzing this document. But that doesn't work as you scale, right? That process doesn't work. It works when you're really, really small though.
And automation can help you scale up and scale down. And, and I was just on the Pet Food Council call earlier today, and they were talking about the industry is booming, but when is the bubble going to burst? And when that happens, what do they need to do to be prepared for that? And to be kind of that agile infrastructure that you have in your company, automation is going to play a key, and data is going to play a key. And connecting those dots with decision making and the ability for your employees to be empowered to accomplish these tasks and more tasks. I think it's all going to be a good future, and it's exciting to see products like yours out on the market.
Yeah, and there's a lot of really cool things happening. So, actually, let me pull up my email here, and I'll be at the FPSA trade show in Chicago. So if anyone wants to meet up, you can email me, and I am happy to meet with anyone over at the trade show or just online as well.
Great. No, thank you, Lucas, and thank you for. There's no more questions, and I just want to say again, Lucas is going to be at Process Expo. That is November 2nd through the 5th in Chicago, McCormick Place. It's where where process and technology meet. It's the only trade show in the world where you have live production lines on the show floor. There's going to be 3 this year: bakery, prepared foods, and meat. And it's going to be great. Food processors, food equipment manufacturers, food suppliers. We're coming to Chicago, so we hope to see you there. This is a good starter conversation. So thank you everyone for joining us, and the Food Safety Network hopes that this gets the conversation going in the right place.
Cool. Yeah. Thanks everyone for attending, and thanks Linda for putting this together.
Yeah, great. Thank you. All right, have a good one. Bye-bye.